following is a special presentation of ABC Sports.
The IndyCars are ready again to challenge the circuit on Belle Isle in Detroit. Last year was the first run on the island. It was the beginning of many changes. The race on a new, narrow, and difficult track saw its share of confrontation. The circuit demands bold driving, and that can be costly. Belle Isle rewards the brave and tenacious. Paul Tracy snatched the top spot from Michael Andretti and led for the first time in his career. Paul was now a force to be reckoned with. But the battle between the young warriors continued, ricocheting off the barriers until both gave way to the experience of Bobby Rahal with designs on another PPG Cup. Even then, they would not give up, fighting every foot until Rahal took the checkered. The win helped boost Rahal and his team to a third IndyCar championship. For the past month on ovals, two men have battled. Brazilian Raul Boesel, searching for a first IndyCar win for himself and his team, qualified outside the front row at the Indianapolis 500 and took the lead. But mistakes like roaring up to speed and passing Mario Andretti on the pit road led to costly penalties. He could only finish fourth. Englishman Nigel Mansell is the reigning World Formula One champion, but at Indy he was a rookie, and it showed. Restart from yellow saw Nigel at the front, but the return to racing was ill-timed, and Emerson Fittipaldi screamed past to win. A week ago, Boesel took his first pole and jumped out in front of the field. The lead rotated from Raul to Scott Goodyear to Paul Tracy. Then Tracy speared Arie Luyendyk. Paul walked away from a race-leading crash for the second time this year. The road was now cleared for Boesel and Mansell to slug it out. Nigel learns fast. Soon, he was out in front. And then left Boesel in his dust. Mansell became the first two-time winner this year. As Mansell stretches his point lead, Boesel moves into second place. They are two of the changing faces of IndyCar racing. In the Detroit River, it's the sixth round of the PPG IndyCar World Series, the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. Hello, I'm Paul Page. And in the past at IndyCar events here in Detroit, Michael Andretti has won every pole. Now he's left and gone to Formula One. Nigel Mansell comes over and takes his seat, and today Nigel has the pole, though it should be noted that Michael's pole speed of last year was only good for 12th position on the grid this year. And Nigel has something more. He leads the points fight now by 19 points over Raul Boesel. The texture of this series now changes, with 4 road races before they return to the ovals at the Michigan 500. And Nigel is the acknowledged master of the road circuits. So if they're going to catch him, they better get to it. But remember, at this race a year ago, Michael Andretti was 58 points behind the lead. And he finished only 4 points behind the ultimate champion, Bobby Rahal. There is a man who is fully capable. He has led twice as many laps as anyone else. His name is Paul Tracy. Here's Jack Arute with an update.
And, Paul, it was at this race 1 year ago that Paul Tracy took over the permanent driving responsibilities for Roger Penske, replacing an injured Rick Mears. And in that race, we saw everything that we have come to know Paul Tracy for. Leading an event, driving aggressively, and even wanging a wall every now and then. Paul Tracy is only 24 years of age, and with the tutelage of Roger Penske and Rick Mears, they're trying to contain his enthusiasm, but not keep him too far under the gun. Tracy hopes to avenge his problems of last year in this race and come home a winner. Remember, the only race he's finished this year, he has come home victorious at Long Beach. For another driver that would like to make his mark for the first time in IndyCar competition, let's check in with Gary Gerould.
Jack, certainly one of the most intriguing stories of this race weekend thus far. The performance turned in by a young Italian rookie driver, Andrea Montermini. He comes here to drive for Antonio Ferrari's Euro Motorsports team, and he is qualified in the third row. This is significant because it's only his second IndyCar event. It's the highest that one of Ferrari's cars has ever qualified for an IndyCar event, and he's doing it in a year-old chassis with a 2-generation-old Chevy A engine. I'll tell you, everybody is very impressed with the performance turned in by Andrea Montermini. He's qualified in the third row.
So there's another new face to keep track of in the IndyCar. Sam Posey, we've talked for a year or so about the changing of the guard.
And now that it's happening, there's an interesting twist. Most of the new drivers are foreign-born. They're not American. Tracy is from Canada, Bosell from Brazil, Johansson from Sweden, the exciting Montermini from Italy. Mansell, of course, the current points leader, is from the UK. And it's a trend that could continue as IndyCar racing becomes better and better known around the world. TV coverage is expanding all the time. This race will be seen in more than 90 different countries.
A record crowd here, beautiful sunshiny day, and the stillness is about to be broken here on Belle Isle at Detroit.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Representatives of the engine start up and down the grid. The challenge roars out. And the IndyCars are ready to run. Nigel Mansell, Paul Tracy, two of the combatants here today, two we will definitely keep an eye on. Paul Tracy sits ready to go as we had a gigantic field that was separated by qualifying here on Belle Isle. So now, let's take a look at the starting grid for today's race. On the pole with a new track record is Nigel Mansell. He's won every road course pole this season. Alongside is Emerson Fittipaldi, a two-time winner in Detroit, but never here on Belle Isle. In row number 2, it's Paul Tracy, who won the last road circuit run at Long Beach. And Stefan Johansson, who placed third here last year in his first ever IndyCar race. Row number 3 is Bobby Rahal, his best starting position so far this season. And Andrea Montermini, the Formula One test driver in his second IndyCar race. Row 4 is Unser Jr. with 15 career road course wins. And Robbie Gordon, he made his IndyCar debut at this track last year. The 5th row is Mario Andretti. In his 30th season, he's won 52 IndyCar races. And Danny Sullivan, the 1988 PPG champ. The 6th row on the inside is Raul Boesel. He placed second here last year. And Mark Smith, an Indy Lights veteran in his third IndyCar race. In row 7, it's Arie Luyendyk, looking for his first road course win. And Jimmy Vasser, who finished third at Phoenix this year. In row 8, it's Olivier Briard, the French driver, in his second IndyCar start. And Teo Fabi, who finished 6th here last year, filling in for the injured Mario Andretti. The 9th row on the inside is Scott Brayton, alongside Roberto Guerrero. In the 10th row, it's Scott Pruitt and Eddie Cheever, who missed last week's race for the birth of his son. In row 11, it's Adrian Fernandez and Scott Goodyear. The 12th row is Robbie Buell and Mike Groff in the only American-made chassis in the field. And in the 13th row, Willie T. Ribbs and Buddy Lazier. And the 14th and final row, Hiro Matsushita and Marco Greco. And Hiro Matsushita had a little trouble starting. They finally got him started, and now all of the Indy cars are out and rolling on the circuit at Belle Isle in Detroit. We'll be right back.
Brought to you by ITT. When it comes to building business, at ITT, we're adding more than just our name. By Old Milwaukee and Old Milwaukee Light. It doesn't get any better than this. By Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by your local Yamaha dealer, who invite you to see their exciting line of motorcycles, ATVs, and water vehicles.
Back at Belle Isle in Detroit as the Indy cars continue warming up. This is a wonderfully scenic location, and Bobby Unser, one I bet you'd like to drive.
Well, Paul, if ever there was a driver's track, this is it. The straightaways are short, which makes passing very difficult, and all 14 turns are tight. Now, this tends to equalize the cars and the drivers as compared to most tracks. The flat surface is very narrow and rough in places. There's no relaxing any place on this track. And in my opinion, This was the best road course race last year, and with the cars being faster because of the tire and the engine development, today's race ought to be even better.
On the pace lap now, 77 laps lie ahead, 161.7 miles, the race record set by defending champion Bobby Rahal, the only one to win on this course at 81.9 miles an hour last year. Some of our onboard camera views, they are going to be spectacular today. Some of the most beautiful road here in the area. And the engines, well, it continues here in Motor City to be a battle between Chevrolet and Ford. And that battle, which began at the start of the year, actually began at Portland a year ago when Ford Cosworth scored their first win. Well, it continues on today. Lola dominates the chassis here today. Rahal Hogan chassis, the only one that is made in the United States. And that one, of course, at the hands of Mike Groff. So as they complete now the pace lap, moving away from the casino, let's look again at the field. The front of it, at least, with Nigel Mansell, who was quickest in the morning warm-up session, Fittipaldi alongside. Then Paul Tracy and Stefan Johansson. In row 2, Bobby Rahal and the new Montermini sits there on the outside of row 3. Row 4, Al Unser Jr. and Robbie Gordon. And so much is expected out of Gordon driving for A.J. Foyt. Mario Andretti and Danny Sullivan in row 5. In the 6th row, Raul Boesel currently second to the points, and rookie Mark Smith. Row 7, Ari Luyendyk and Jimmy Vasser. The 8th row, Olivier Griard and Teo Fabi. Row number 9, Scott Brayton, Roberto Guerrero. The 10th row, Scott Pruitt and Eddie Cheever. In row 11, Adrian Fernandez, the rookie, and Scott Goodyear. Robbie Buell and Mike Groff. In the 12th row, the 13th, Willie T. Ribbs and Buddy Lazier. And the final row, Hiro Matsushita and Marco Greco. And now they stream toward Jen Swintel's green flag, and here we go. As look at the two Penske cars jump around Nigel Mansell on the start, and we're off and running already. Fittipaldi at the front, followed by Paul Tracy, and now Bobby Rahal comes up to challenge Nigel Mansell as the fight for second place develops. At the same time, a bit of a test between Tracy and Fittipaldi for the lead. You're on board the nose of Bobby Rahal's car. Lap number 1, that's the red number 5, Nigel Mansell just ahead as Rahal tries to overtake. They come around the casino area, right at the edge of the lake as they make the turnout here, the edge of the Detroit River. And Emerson Fittipaldi strongly in the lead now, but Paul Tracy already looking for any opportunity that he can find. And Nigel Mansell sits in 3rd place. The indication on the official communication channels is that the team manager for number 5, Nigel Mansell, Jim McGee, wants a restart of this race. He's not happy with the way it started. Apparently, they have declined that request as Nigel Mansell continues his pursuit of the two Penske cars.
Well, Paul, the start, as we know, because it's so hard to pass here, is very important. Emerson has more experience with it. He kind of knows what the flagman will let go by and what he won't. But from where we sat, it looked like it was a good start.
Let's take a look at that start again, Bobby, and maybe we can get an idea of what Jim McGee might be concerned with.
Well, you can see Emerson's on the left, Mansell's on the right. And coming down, you see they're still fairly close. Mansell's up there for a little bit, fell back. Emerson had about a car length on him when he started, but look at Tracy going by the outside. Now that's Mansell's fault, not the starter's fault.
Well, you think the argument might be, though, that it seemed that Fittipaldi came to the right and crowded him a little?
No, I don't think so. I think that was really a good start.
Let's go to the pits, Jack Arute.
Paul, that was a calculated risk on the part of Team Penske. They determined before the start of the race they were going to attempt that. In the drivers' meeting, Nigel Mansell was quite outspoken about restarts, asked for a ruling on it, and the quote from Wally Dallenbach was, "Gentlemen, that's a problem on ovals. We'll deal with it when we get to the next oval." But after the meeting, Nigel huddled with Wally Dallenbach and continued his plaintive decree about the fact that he doesn't understand these starts where drivers can pass even if you're on the pole.
Well, the interesting point Jack, don't you think, is maybe how Nigel Mansell lost Indianapolis, was on a restart. So this is one part of IndyCar racing he's just not familiar enough yet with. And I think the exciting thing now is we've got potentially the fastest car on the track running in third. We're going to see some passing attempts.
Probably the greatest thing that was said that puts a period on all of it was Bobby Rahal sitting in the back of the drivers' meeting saying, "Welcome to IndyCar racing, Nigel."
Montermini now battles with Unser Jr. in a fight for 7th place. This is the key battle on the circuit. They've sorted out at the top of the field. The actual rule is green to the front row is green to the field on most of the IndyCar events. Indianapolis, they prefer that you don't pass until after you're over the start-finish line. But once you see green, you can go.
One of the reasons Montermini has been so successful here is he does a lot of testing for the Benetton Formula One team. He has also tested for Ferrari a couple of years ago. He's very technically oriented, which has helped him tremendously.
And let's also keep in mind, it's very early in the race. These guys are running literally with full loads of fuel now. Sometimes even on the warm-up session in the morning, they don't run them full. But they are right now, so they're feeling the track out, and they're full loads mostly.
Relatively bad start for Mario. He's going to have a lot of ground to make up.
Well back as you're looking in 9th place for Mario Andretti as he comes through this curving front straightaway here on Belle Isle.
Another thing to remember, too, is that guys can't see very far ahead because there's cement walls on both sides. In most cases, they're only seeing, you can look right there and see. You can't really see what's happening ahead of them, so it takes a little while kind of to get into all the traffic that's going on.
They've widened this track a little bit this year to try to give the drivers better visibility, not necessarily to make it faster, though the speeds have been faster owing to tire and engine development.
And right in there is where they did it, Paul. You can see all those red cones on both sides. That's what we call a back straightaway. It's really not a straightaway, but it's a straightaway in that they don't have to back off the throttle through there.
14 turns on the track. Only 2 of them could be described as fast turns. The rest are second or low third gear turns. Very tight.
The view overhead from an aerial films helicopter, which helps us with our coverage here in Detroit, and gives you a marvelous view as the helicopter swoops down over the top of the cars as they run down these straightaways. The fight is at the front, and now we're taking a look at Johansson, who for a moment darted out and started to challenge Bobby Rahal.
As we watch in practice, Johansson's really been aggressive. So we're going to start watching for him being aggressive in the race. He's not done too well this year so far, but he does get on the gas.
An update on Stefan Johansson from Gary Gerould.
Paul, there was a report from the crew that Johansson got hit from behind by Robbie Gordon. They don't think there's anything seriously wrong, but keep in mind, Johansson was knocked out early at Long Beach. He was knocked out early last week at Milwaukee. He's had contact early here, but this time he stays in the race.
Well, Robbie Gordon sits right behind him on the track. In the meantime, Bobby Rahal is closing in once again on Nigel Mansell.
Indeed, as promising as Johansson from Sweden has been this year, he has yet to record a top 10 finish. He was third last year, as we've said. This race means a lot to him. It's a real pivotal race for Stefan Johansson.
Let's go back and take another view of this start, this time from this very same camera that is mounted on Bobby Rahal's car. Again, some concern in the Newman-Haas pits as to the nature of the start. Bobby Unser, that's Paul Tracy just ahead.
Yes, and you can see Stefan Johansson on the left. There they're taking off. And you can see the starting line went way back what we saw. The trick to it is look on the left there, the car that's in the middle of that picture. That's Paul Tracy. He still went by Nigel. Nigel just didn't get the start. It's never the rule that the cars have to be totally even when they go across the start and finish line. That's totally up to the starter himself. And that was a relatively close start. It's just the road races are so important.
Perhaps we can get a further update on the concerns of the Newman-Haas team. Again, let's go to Gary Gerould.
Well, Jim McGee is now settled into the normal race routine, but I'll tell you, on that opening green flag, he was very angry, Paul, and there was a kart official or an IndyCar official right across the wall. He immediately summoned them. There was a lot of gesturing. They wanted a yellow flag and a restart. They didn't get it as they lobbied race control.
Well, Paul, that's really never happened. I know Jim is mad. He's a real racer. The guy is really feisty, but it's never happened that I can ever remember.
So Jim McGee watches his driver, who currently runs in third place. Mario Andretti is back in ninth. Those are the two Newman-Haas cars. And at the front of the field, the Penske team leads it, led by Fittipaldi and Paul Tracy. the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix, where Emerson Fittipaldi leads Paul Tracy by 0.4 of a second. You see the rest of the intervals down through the top 6. Robbie Gordon has begun to try and put the pressure on Stefan Johansson, who in turn is pressuring Bobby Rahal. That is taking some of the pressure off the front 2 runners. Now look at Johansson as he closes on the back of Rahal.
Rahal's falling back just a little bit. I don't mean he has a problem, but he's falling back just a little bit. That's giving Johansson a little bit of hope. If he puts the pressure on Rahal, Rahal's going to have to get it up and start putting it on Mansell, who's right in front of him.
If there was a concern about Johansson's car, it doesn't seem manifest now. He's not really showing any problem whatsoever, and neither is Gordon, who is just behind them.
Now we have to keep in mind also of how difficult it is to pass. If you notice, as we go around the track here, the cars are almost always turning, hardly ever going straight. So therefore, a pass has to be done in the turns. So Rahal, as you see him looking, or Johansson looking at Rahal, he's trying to figure out where Rahal is weak, and he'll have to do in the turns.
Remember that this is a confrontation between a Lola in the hands of Rahal there, number 1, you see it, and a Penske car in the hands of Johansson. In other words, Johansson is driving a car that is a sister car to the 2 cars that are standing 1-2 at this point.
And also, Sam, I want to mention that the Penske car is a 93 car. It's like almost being part of the Penske team. They have the same engine and the same chassis as Penske has in his car.
Emerson Fittipaldi just ran the fastest lap of the race, just over 100 miles an hour, and immediately Paul Tracy, running in second, came back at 100.5 miles an hour. So there's a speed battle at the front.
Interesting thing from a career standpoint, career path, as you see the view from Bobby Rahal's car. When Emerson Fittipaldi drove a Penske car for an independent team, that was Pat Patrick's team in 1989, it got Roger's attention, and Emerson moved into Roger's team. Now we see Stefan Johansson driving for Tony Bettenhausen's team, and there's every chance that Roger's taken a real good look at this young Swedish driver who has such a great background in Formula One. You see him there right behind Bobby Rahal.
Rahal being challenged by Johansson. We'll try to get on board with you a couple of times, because this is an opportunity to really listen to the gears and the drivers climb up and down through their gearboxes on this rather tight circuit. 2.1 miles around, 14 turns. Johansson and Rahal close again on Nigel Mansell. Robbie Gordon is kind of waiting station back in 6th position. Let's go to Jack Arute for an update on all of this first lap problem.
Paul, the kart officials are now talking to Rick Reineman and Chuck Sprague. They have just informed him that because Emerson Fittipaldi jumped the start by more than a quarter of a length, they are going to bring Fittipaldi in for a stop-and-go penalty.
Well, maybe Nigel Mansell does understand the rules, Bobby.
Well, I certainly guessed that one wrong. In all my years of racing, I have never seen that happen before. There's Jim McGee.
Jim McGee's talking to Nigel Mansell on the radio, and no doubt getting him up to speed.
Obviously telling him, and another precedent has been set. That's for certain sure.
All right, now what this means, of course, is that Paul Tracy will be leading the race. His pace has been more or less controlled by Emerson Fittipaldi up to this point. Tracy will be on his own, and he has been notorious for having trouble when leading the race, especially when coming up behind back markers.
Even more on this story. Here's Gary Gerould.
Paul, we indicated earlier that McGee was angry and he lobbied an IndyCar official. He wasn't satisfied after they had said, no, there'll be no penalty. He went and got Billy Camphausen, who's one of the lead officials on pit road. Camphausen had a hurried discussion. Then they came up with this possible decision. Let's go up pit road to Jack.
Well, Gary, the lobbying effort continues. Now the IndyCar official went to Roger Penske and to Rick Mears. Their retort to this potential stop-and-go penalty is there is no rule about how far you can jump a start before you're brought in. So this is not over yet, folks.
And Johansson was able to move during that exchange around Rahal, and now he begins to close on Nigel Mansell.
I just want to say one more time on that start. The starts, as long as I've been racing, which is a long time, have always been up to the starter, the guy standing up there waving the flag. If he doesn't like the lineup of those cars, he's not supposed to throw the flag. So if they do pull him in today, they will have established a new precedent never done before in the history of IndyCar racing.
And from your tone, do I understand you're not happy with it?
I would be on Roger Penske's side in this particular case because it's never been done before.
So Emerson Fittipaldi still remains in front of Paul Tracy, though we wait to see whether or not they will give, and he will respond to a black flag, bringing him into the pits.
So far in the season, the two best teams in IndyCar racing have been this one, Penske's, and the Newman-Haas, represented by Nigel Mansell. They have won all of the races held so far this year between them, and they are first, second, and third right now.
So Fittipaldi continues in the lead, followed by Paul Tracy. Nigel Mansell is third. Johansson made the only move since the start and sits in fourth place now. Bobby Rahal is fifth. Robbie Gordon is sixth. Montermini sits in seventh place.
Emerson Fittipaldi, ever since Indianapolis, has been so cocky. He's been so confident. He's been late to a lot of his things. He likes to be late to things, do things strictly on his own time, late to a lot of interviews, and he just doesn't care. He's cocky, he's confident, he's had a wonderful time since Indy.
There's Montermini. Al Unser Jr. is closing on him, and just behind him is Raul Boesel. Ongoing battle for seventh place, and Boesel is closing down quickly.
This is where the big fight's going to start right now, Paul, because there has to be pressure. And so far, early in this race, really haven't seen as much passing as I would have thought. The cars much faster than they were last year. Maybe they're not faster where passing is even harder than we anticipated.
There's another car in this string, too, as Danny Sullivan now begins to close on Boesel. So all four of those cars are running together on the circuit and beginning to fight with one another.
It's extraordinary that a driver of Al Unser Jr.'s experience is running behind Montermini at this point.
And Montermini is doing one heck of a good job, Sam, and he's been doing it so far all weekend.
Well, he has that Chevrolet engine, which has to be down 50 or 60 horsepower at least to Little Al's Chevrolet C engine.
But remember, this track equalizes horsepower. Horsepower is not so important here, so everybody knows, because the straightaways are short. You don't have the long straightaways where you're pushing really high speeds.
Back up watching Johansson as he closes now with Nigel Mansell, and this battle continues for third place. So at the front of the field, still Fittipaldi. Look at them use the curves, though, in this suspension move as Mansell gets high up on those curves.
These cars have very tough suspensions, as witnessed Nigel Mansell striking the wall at 220 miles an hour at Indianapolis and being able to finish.
Now you can watch that suspension as we go through those particular turns. The more it moves up and down, the rougher the track is right there.
Let's continue this view of the start. This time we can take a look at it from Nigel Mansell's point of view. And here comes, as Fittipaldi is dropped into the pits off of the lead, he makes his stop and go. That gives the lead of the race over. There goes Fittipaldi out, and that, of course, gives the lead of the race over to Paul Tracy. So as we suggested, the officials did decide the black flag should be displayed to this driver, and he comes out just ahead of Montermini.
Well, and is he mixing it up back there? Look at little Al getting up alongside.
Al Unser Jr. uses the opportunity to get past, so Al Unser Jr. comes forward and into seventh place, and now challenges on Fittipaldi.
Just so that people know, when Emmo came back out on the racetrack right there, the number 4 car, the turbocharger's already cooled off when he made a stop-and-go penalty, so he doesn't have it really lit, and heat is what makes the turbocharger work. So when he first hit the track, he was lacking in horsepower just a little bit.
He also had spun his wheels all the way down the pit lane, and he might have had an imbalance in the handling as a result of that.
Now that they've assessed the penalty, we'll look at this start again from Nigel Mansell's point of view. We're on lap 13. You're looking backwards from Nigel Mansell. That's Paul Tracy just behind him.
The point is, a precedent has been set. You men have been talking about that, and it's quite extraordinary what we've seen here. The penalizing of Emerson Fittipaldi.
Here it is from a camera looking straight on to the line. The argument, of course, would be that Emerson Fittipaldi crossed the line ahead of Nigel Mansell, but I've got the kart rule book right here. And the race car is saying, as the starting signal is given, the timing of the race shall commence the instant the front wheels of the pole car reach the starting line. If the pole car does not reach the starting line, the timing of the race shall commence the instant the front wheels of the next race car. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, Billy Camphausen, who makes many of these calls in conjunction with Wally Dallenbach, what was the official ruling on the stop and go?
Jack, the the officials were concerned about the jump that possibly took place on the 4 car. They reviewed that with timing and scoring, and the stewards got together and made a decision, which was to bring the car in on a stop and go.
How does one answer what Rick Mears and Roger Penske were arguing, the fact that nothing was described in the drivers' meeting?
I cannot answer that. That's not my position to answer.
Paul?
So the complexion of the race changes, much like Indianapolis, with an official call. And Paul Tracy is now in front of the race ahead of Nigel Mansell. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Detroit, Paul Tracy is now the leader, followed by Nigel Mansell and Stefan Johansson. That all comes, of course, as a result of the black flag displayed to Emerson Fittipaldi, calling him into the pits. He answers the black flag with a stop-and-go penalty, and that is all by a perception of the officials that there was an apparent violation of some rule as they crossed the line. Well, we're looking at the rule book at paragraph 6.6.3, which is the one that appears to address starts. We certainly can't find it. And that seems to be exactly the position that the Penske team is taking at this point, though they dutifully did answer the flag.
Well, remember one thing, too, that when the starter throws the green flag, it makes no difference where the car is. That is the official start of the race. Now, it may not be timing and scoring, but let's watch it once. We're going to run it one more time. Now, watch the car, watch the flag on the right there. Now, he threw the flag there. There was less than 1 car length difference when he threw the flag. Forget about when it crosses the line. If the car on the right, for example, had quit, that race would have still officially been started. It would have just gone yellow right then.
Well, in the paragraph I read,
look at the green flag.
It's well out a good car length ahead, and the paragraph refers to the timing of the start of the race beginning at that line. It says nothing about the interval, nor does it mandate that the full car necessarily has to cross it first.
Roger Penske will be protesting this one for a long time, is my opinion.
So the race affected by a decision of the officials. We'll see, though, if Emerson Fittipaldi can fight his way back up. He currently rides in 6th place. He has been in a battle for several laps with this man, Unser Jr. And he got past Little Al, but Little Al is not having a whole lot of it. Robbie Gordon now sits just ahead of Fittipaldi, and Ray Hall just ahead of Gordon.
Fittipaldi is doing a good job containing what must be a high degree of anger in the cockpit. He's made no mistake since he came back out on the track. He didn't immediately try to scythe his way through the cars that got ahead of him. He's kept his head. He's very cool.
Let's go to the Penske pits once again. Further update. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, we were going to talk to Roger Penske about this whole situation. He said, no, please talk to Rick. Rick, your version, the team version about this stop and go and that alleged jump on the start.
Well, I just don't agree with it. I don't believe in it. I've never heard of that before. I've never heard it announced or anything else, and they ought to explain it. If there's a rule that you're going to be penalized for a car and a half ahead of the other car, if somebody got a nose on me, I'd just let off and get him penalized every time. That rule does not work, and it's something I've never heard of. It shouldn't be done.
Well, Paul, add to this, remember what I told you at the top of the show, that Nigel Mansell was huddled with Wally Dallenbach after the drivers' meeting, continuing to plead his case about these starts that he wasn't used to. Maybe it planted a seed in Wally's mind.
Boy, isn't that a racer's thinking, though? As Mears says, this was just moments ago. As 2 cars coming together here, and that is Brayton gets together with Scott Pruitt. They touch one another. Both of them look like they leave none the worse for wear. Brayton and Pruitt tapping. They were running at the time in about 16th and 17th position. Back on board with Bobby Rahal, 4th place.
Just one. That camera's the only camera.
Pruitt's got some problems with it now as he begins to slow down and come into his pit area. And there's the 19 car, Robbie Buell, with a problem.
Right into the tires. Look how nice those tires work when the guys get into them. There won't be an awful lot of damage with that car. Obviously, you can see the slide marks, the rubber marks going in. Had his front brakes locked up. Probably got into the turn too fast. Went right into the tires. Really helps a bunch.
Mark Smith in the pits of well. Robbie Buell, of course, from nearby Grosse Pointe, just outside of Detroit here. Mark Smith, the rookie, they were hoping for so much from him. And he has climbed out of that car. His day is done. So just in the last few seconds, you can see Mark, by the way, standing at the back of the car with his helmet perched on the wheel.
Well, they got it up in the air. I don't know what was wrong with that one. We didn't see that.
So several cars suddenly with a problem. Buell, Pruitt, and Mark Smith all within the same lap. 19 laps are complete. You now ride with Danny Sullivan. And watch how much driving he does.
Yeah, and watch how rough the track is at certain points as it makes the transition from asphalt to concrete. You see the concrete here and then back to asphalt. The cars, which have very little suspension travel, they're stiffly sprung, about an inch of suspension travel at the front, a couple of inches at the back. They really transmit the bumps of the track up into the driver.
Now to add to Emerson Fittipaldi's woes, car number 4, the report is that he may have brushed the wall, and they're going to bring him in and take a look at it. So Fittipaldi, who's already been in once to answer a stop and go, now they're going to bring him in and just take a look at the race car.
Little Al sees a weakness there. He's working hard on Emble. Now, he wouldn't know that Emble's going to come in there, or that he isn't going to come in. Yellow out there right now in a certain area, but little Al just sees a weakness, so he's working hard to get by Emble.
That, of course, is what you call a local yellow only, but you cannot pass in the area where a yellow flag is waving. Then once you're past the incident, you can come back up to speed.
It just may not be Emerson's weekend. He lost control of the car yesterday during a qualifying run. Just before he came up to speed, he put the throttle down hard and oversteered out into one of the walls and damaged the suspension yesterday afternoon. Now this trouble again.
Jack Arute, you have more on the Fittipaldi story?
Well, Paul, Chuck Sprague and Rick Ronneman had reconsidered the fact as to whether to bring MO in or not. They decided now there's the full course yellow. That's what they needed. They were going to leave him out unless it went full course.
Well, we've gone full course yellow here, and as a result of this, almost all of the crews will be prepared for a pit stop because it comes right at the 20th lap, and that's well within the window.
We can watch everybody right across the mud is getting ready for the cars in. Almost every car will do it.
So on Belle Isle, it is Paul Tracy in front, and a full course yellow is out. He pits for tires and service. As the crew falls on that car, you look from high overhead. And just that quickly, the car back into the fight. This stop coming on the 21st lap with the full course yellow for several incidents on the track. Bobby Rahal is in. There's Nigel Mansell in the pits. So all of the cars, for the most part, taking an opportunity. Look at Mansell roar away. Is that great?
You can see Mansell's people take a lot more time on theirs, though, than you did Paul Tracy's, Paul.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Emerson Fittipaldi continuing to have problems befall him. When he came in, he almost overshot his pit, and now he has stalled the car. They're going to have to go to work to restart it. Things are not going well for Team Penske in terms of Emerson Fittipaldi.
And Mario Andretti makes the tight turn down at nearly the last pit, just before the pit exit as he comes in for his stop. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Watch with the crew as Mario comes off the jacks. He lights up the tires and is out of here. His teammate Mansell ahead of him coming in made a slight wing change, trying to alter the handling characteristics of the car, Paul.
At the moment, everyone except Scott Brayton has made a stop. And this was Mario's approach into the pits. Take a look at that swing that he took as he came in. And when he comes out of the pits, he also has to make a very sharp right turn to rejoin the race course.
The Newman-Haas team pitted at one end of the pits. The Penske team, their rivals, chief rivals, pitted at just the other end.
It's always interesting, Sam, on why these guys pick out total end of the pit. Two of the most competitive teams here, but they have their reasons for it. And sometimes we may disagree with them, but they definitely think they're each right.
We mentioned the local yellow rule. This, of course, is the full course yellow rule that's in effect. That's when the officials decide you'd put a yellow flag out at every corner station and send out Johnny Rutherford in the PPG pace car. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company has dispatched the Goodyear Blimp Spirit to provide the aerial views of the Detroit Grand Prix today. It floats so lazily in the sky right here on the border between the United States and Canada, the Detroit River that separates Detroit and Windsor. So now, under the yellow, Nigel Mansell for the moment has assumed the lead, followed by Stefan Johansson. Back in Detroit, tonight here on ABC, Bob Saget hosts America's Funniest Home Videos, 8 o'clock, 7 Central. That's followed by America's Funniest People, and then Meredith Baxter stars as a woman having an extramarital affair in Burning Bridges, a Sunday night movie tonight here on ABC. There has been some action leading into this yellow. As the yellow came out and everybody headed for the pits, one of them, of course, was Mario Andretti. Now watch as Unser Jr. comes out of his pit. Mario locks locks the brakes up, misses Little Al, and makes it into his pit anyway. Nice piece of driving there. And then Emerson Fittipaldi was coming into his pit. It's the very first one, but one of the tires was in the way. It had added some time to the stop because they had to pull it out of the way before he could actually come into position. Now let's go to Gary Gerould.
Paul, Goodyear has this year a softer compound for tires at this circuit than they had last year, their first time here. We saw evidence of wear and some concern as Mario Andretti made the stop. Kenny Szymanski is the tire expert for the Newman-Haas team. Is this normal wear and tear? Is this a blister? What did we see?
Yeah, we just got a normal blister situation here, Gary. The tire's a little softer, as you said. Of course, it's a lot hotter than it was last year because we had a very cool day last year, and it's normal. The setup is a little bit off maybe in the rear end.
Will you change the tire pressures?
You bet we will.
Okay, we'll go back to Paul.
Still under a full course yellow. The leader under yellow is Paul Tracy, winning his first IndyCar race at Long Beach. He also dominated at Phoenix and Milwaukee, only to fall short as a victim of circumstance. We ask him if he begins now to question his ability after such moments.
It gets tough sometimes.
Well,
I'm sure the way I look at it, over the last week, I've looked at it, I could have lead the championship now with 3 wins, but it didn't happen. So we gotta move on to the next race, and I've had some talks with some people, with Roger, and they said, hey, you just gotta keep moving on and not worry about the past. And when you take a look at a guy like Michael, the last 2 years, he didn't make any points until Portland. Last year, he didn't have any points until Portland, so we just gotta focus and get things turned around.
And the green comes out once again here on Belle Isle after a full course caution. There was some slower traffic ahead of the leader, Paul Tracy, most notably Marco Greco, but he wisely got out of the way. Now he's being chased by Nigel Mansell, Stefan Johansson, Bobby Rahal, and Unser Jr. as the race is back on. 25 laps are complete.
Now, Paul, even though all the cars came in the pits at one time, so we didn't get a chance to see all the adjustments that were made, but some of these guys, there's Johansson going by Greco. Some of these guys made some adjustments to their car. So now we got to watch, like, for example, with Mansell. Did he make an adjustment, or will he make a gain?
The front 3 cars, now the front 4 back in contact as Rahal gets clear as well. And now Unser Jr. will struggle to get around slower traffic, and then he will be back in the fight too. Buddy Lazier sits just ahead of Little Al. The field has been in for a pit stop as we've got a car solidly into the barrier now, and that is Olivier Briard, the French driver, in his second IndyCar race. And he got a good piece of the tire barrier, but the car looks none the worse from wear. That's the big advantage to these kind of barriers.
Those tires are saving more money than anything else in IndyCar racing is ever saving. They just catch the car like a balloon and stop it. There might be minor damage, but at least it's not a new car.
One asset of these many yellows is that Roger Penske is doubtless able to talk to Paul Tracy a lot more than he might ordinarily be able to, and keep him calm, keep talking him through this race.
Scott Brayton into the pits, stop and go penalty. You saw it's a violation of the pit speed limit here. You saw the corner workers and the course marshals here, who, by the way, are all volunteers. They come out and spend days of their time just to make sure that these kind of races can keep going. And they were pulling Briard out of the way as fast as they can, thinking, well, if one car got there, another one can. Yellow in this section of the race course. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Sam Posey, your supposition is absolutely correct. Roger Penske has utilized this downtime to try and talk his young driver through. As he has said so many other times, he said, remember, stay calm, be smooth. The most important thing he kept saying is, remember what Rick has tried to teach you.
Rick obviously having tremendous impact on this team now that he's the coach rather than the driver. Witness Emerson Fittipaldi's great drive at Indianapolis, but very much patterned after the way Rick used to drive at Indianapolis.
Goes Scott Brayton, penalized for violating the 80-mile-an-hour speed limit rule in the pits. Let's take a look at the incident that put Briard into the wall. That's Bosell alongside, and he just got high on the entry to the corner, pushed out, and straight into the barrier.
And it's slippery. When he got out of what we call the groove being the black spot that you see where the cars run. He got on the outside of that, and that's where we call the marbles lie. And the car really got loose when he hit the marbles.
But you know, it's a warm day here, a lot of sunshine. Same situation. See the back end come around there?
that one barrier, and that hooked the car and come right into the front end, but it sure slowed it down easy. He just got too high on the track, that's all.
Well, we've seen a lot of the cars coming loose. The back end of the car coming out on a number of these corners, so maybe the track is getting a bit slippery too.
Well, Paul, it isn't getting too slippery right now. He just was too wide going in there, but obviously at this particular time of the race, it's going to get slippery because all the cars drop a little bit of fluid, and they always do it in the groove. That's the worst place in the world to be dropping it, though.
Race summary after 26 laps. The leader, Paul Tracy, no challenge at the front at the moment. Averaging 87 miles an hour. These are the cars out. Buell, Smith, Arute in his contact. Buell into the barrier. Smith climbed out, and of course, Briard.
There's a way that Tracy moves the car around a track when he's really hustling it. We're not looking at that right now. He's driving a smooth race, keeping Mansell at bay. This is a little different, Paul Tracy, than we're used to. And Mansell, you can see, is the man who's hustling, getting it a little deep in that turn and locking up one of his front wheels.
Now, immediately, Sam, he'll reach over and make an adjustment to those brakes. These drivers can adjust their brake balance between the front and the rear by just turning a knob inside the car. He had a little bit too much on the front, and this guy, Mansell, drives him deep into the turn. So he'll just make a little adjustment.
Well, there's a view of Nigel Mansell's tires, Bobby.
Those are all blisters, you know, just too much heat for the rubber. We said that the rubber was softer this year. Well, sometimes the drivers never run them as hard as they can until race day, so the blisters don't show up in practice and qualifying.
Is that the result we're seeing here, or is that just his driving style coming hard into that corner?
No, it's really nothing to do with the braking. It just happens to be that the tires are just a little bit too soft for the heat and the speed they're running today.
So Tracy continues his lead, upping the ante now to about 101 miles an hour on each lap that he turns, but Mansell is turning a lap at about the same pace, trying to catch Paul Tracy with 28 laps of 77 now complete on Belle Isle.
Lately, as Indy cars go faster and faster, they wanted an accurate system to keep track of the cars on the racetrack. They now have a totally automated timing and scoring system, the heart of which is in fact this transmitter that has a number that's then assigned to the number of the car, and then it is placed here in the side pod. So in fact, as the car passes across the track, there are antennas buried into the racetrack, 7 of which around the track to give you all types of information. Now, the information that it gives you is lap time, position on the track, speed on the actual straightaway, as well as time spent in the pits. They have now made available this year for the first time an actual floppy disk after the race with all the information not only of your own car, but in fact for every competitor. So on the way home, since most of the teams do have now these notebook computers, they could crunch all those numbers and see how their performance was relative on the track versus the pits, which could certainly help them in the future for strategy. Now also in the future, we may see in fact these transmitters make their way from the race car to the road. In fact, there's now a study going underway that instead of having to pay tolls when you drive through, that road cars might have a transponder similar to this, so you would never have to stop and pay a toll.
Back at the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix, boy, look at this group of cars. This is a battle that revolves around about 12th place. Teo Fabi and then Jimmy Vasser, then Emerson Fittipaldi. You see him coming through there, and right behind him, that's Mike Groff in the Ray Hall Hogan car. And he has been doing everything he can to get around Fittipaldi. There's Fittipaldi just ahead. Last few laps, Groff has really been all over the top of Fittipaldi's car.
Well, Bobby talked about how tough it is to pass here, and this is a driver's nightmare. Fittipaldi penalized, of course, dropped back, and now he has such a hard time working his way up. It can be laps before you can put a pass on a car that is nearly equal.
Yeah, and when a guy slows down in front, Sam, he slows the whole chain down. The guys back in the back start doing sometimes crazy passes, and of course that's what most of them are worried about, because it does slow it. It's like an accordion working back and forth.
We're riding with the only Indy car that is made in the United States, as we see Stefan Johansson
starting to work on Nigel Mansell.
You bet.
Battle for second place. Here they come as Mansell.
You can see the groove Nigel was in right there, Paul. He's not handling quite as good as he was. He was a little tight coming off that turn. Instead of letting the car have his head, so to speak.
Same time Ray Hall closes in on Johansson. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
A radio report call from Nigel Mansell. They are going to concern their efforts now on trying to save tires. They saw the blisters on the set that came off on the yellow flag pit stop. Also reported blisters, Unser Jr., Eddie Cheever, Dan Sullivan, and we also mentioned Mario Andretti. So there's concern on tires for a lot of these crews. Mansell's trying to conserve. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, there is no concern on your leader's pit concerning tires. Now, all these Goodyear tires start with 5/30 seconds of tread on them. When they took the last set off, they measured it. That was the qualifying set. And for Paul Tracy, he had 4:30 seconds remaining. They have no tire problems. Maybe that's why they're leading.
Let's see, though, if that instruction translates to Nigel Mansell. It sure doesn't look like it as he locks that left front again coming into the corner. If they've told him to be careful on the tires, maybe he's trying, and maybe it just isn't showing.
Well, Nigel always drives deep in the turn. Johansson's really working on him hard. He always drives deep in the turn, but if you'll notice right now, he's going through the turns slower. And that's why you try to take care of the tires. And incidentally, all the air pressure changes in the world won't stop the blistering that they're having today.
Johansson all over Mansell in a battle for second.
It's the first time this year that we've seen Mansell in a defensive position. Briefly at Long Beach when Little Al was attacking him, and that ended in Little Al in the wall. It'll be very interesting to see what happens here. Little Al disparaged Nigel Mansell at that point, saying he blocked him, and finally when he started by him, he put him in the wall. And I think we may see a very tense situation develop here.
What we have here, too, that is fascinating is the factor of tactics figuring into this, because Mansell, if he obeys the order from the pits and slows it down, and it does appear that he is trying to conserve tires as best he can, well, then he may fall back a bit only to conserve for a charge late in the race.
Well, remember, he has a gigantic lead in the championship, almost one full race worth over Raul Boesel, who at this point is well back in the field. So championship-wise, Mansell merely needs to keep it out of trouble. That's his main goal now.
And as far as taking care of the tires, naturally the guy is smart. Any of these race drivers that are here today know how to take care of their tires as best they can. But like Paul said, just slow down too much, you're going to lose it anyway. Now the difference, why some cars do it and don't do it, is all in the handling. Often, it's a mere matter of how much air pressure, or excuse me, how much downforce they have in the wings.
Tony Bettenhausen, Stefan Johansson's car owner, driver himself, drove at Indy.
He may be trying to get a black flag thrown at Mansell. I wouldn't be a bit surprised, because I'm sure Stefan is radioing in that he's being blocked. I wouldn't agree necessarily, but it's been a close call on a couple of occasions.
Sam, that's another one that shouldn't be happening, and I don't think it will. There's no precedent set for that, because he's not blocking him. He's just getting in the way a little bit, but he's certainly not blocking him. He's going as fast as he can. It's just this racetrack is very hard to pass on.
I always thought that the administration of the rules in any race ought to be loose enough to really to allow them to race as much as they can, and to try merely to keep everything as equal as possible. We've seen this year some officiating that has brought that into question. Indianapolis here, even earlier in the season at Australia, there was a couple of questions being asked.
I think sometimes, Paul, when you see that there's obviously intentional
with a tire, left rear, that's Eddie Cheever.
Here's Adrian Fernandez.
We got a glimpse of Eddie Cheever, though, with a problem with his left rear as it started to come off the wheel.
Fernandez back in 18th.
There's Cheever as he gets it back under control and is going to try to get it back into the pits. They put a white flag out in the corner. Now that means that there's a slower moving vehicle just ahead, so if you come around the corner, you won't be surprised by it.
Cheever had been running in 15th.
He's going to be lucky to make it in with that tire still on the rim. But the car can get down and run on the rim. Unfortunately, it's going to scrape some of the bottom of the car before it gets to the pits.
What about the rim?
Well, the rim they don't really care about. He's probably already ruined that by now.
Wait a minute. How much does the rim cost?
The rim probably cost about $1,500, Paul.
I'd care.
Sullivan is having an exceptional day. You see the telemetry there. We're looking at his throttle opening there, the third thing over. You're in and out of the throttle on a track like this, unlike Indianapolis, where you're on it almost all the time. This is a little bit easier on engines, except that it's such a hot day. Notice the work he's doing. Coming into this race, Sullivan was almost estranged from the Gallus team. Really a difficult situation between him and the team. They had not had much results so far this year. Suddenly, Danny and Little Al, for that matter, came alive on this track. They're doing exceptionally well. Sullivan in 6th, Little Al in 5th right now. A strong showing today for the Gallus team.
Danny Sullivan putting a lot of input into that wheel. In some corners, you can see how terribly rough it is as he bounces over different changes in the pavement. Eddie Cheever is into the pits now as he gets that tire repaired, new wheel assembly on, and Eddie Cheever is back into the fight. Paul Tracy is still the leader. He is now unchallenged by Nigel Mansell, who runs in second place. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
The ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix, brought to you by Budweiser. Fresh, pure, natural, proud to be your Bud. By Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. By Toyota, reminding you to always buckle up. Do it for those who love you. And by AC Delco Automotive Parts. AC Delco, it's like buying time.
Looking down on the circuit at Belle Isle, Detroit, the leader of the race, Paul Tracy. You see he runs with a clear track ahead, unchallenged by Nigel Mansell, who is some distance back in second place. The Goodyear Blimp Spirit drifting lazily over this track in a beautiful blue sky. The pilot today is John Moran. Great to have them around at IndyCar race.
This race represents something of an aesthetic highlight, I think, for the year. The beautiful park here, designed by Frederick Law Olmsted. You see an exciting at 10 miles.
He gets it up on the curve and gets it sideways, but he keeps it under control. He was making a move on Arie Luyendyk. That's an ongoing battle for 10th place.
He was braking when he went up on the curve, and that's what turned the car sideways so fast. He thought he had to brake because he was trying to pass Arie right there.
Beautifully controlled by the Italian driver, Teo Fabi, who a week from now, and there's more action here.
Stefan Johansson still worrying at the back of Mansell's car. Now, Bobby, is that blocking or not?
That's intentional blocking. That's when Wally Dallenbach, in my opinion, ought to come up and say, hey, now that is not the way we race over here.
I think it's gone from being a feint here and there to something that is going on lap after lap.
All the brakes light up with smoke as they chase Mansell into the corner. You're on board the nose of Bobby Rahal's car. Johansson is just ahead, then Mansell just ahead of him. And Mansell is making that car very wide indeed.
They call Mansell the Lion. He is a warrior kind of mentality in the car. He's not going to give anything away. But he may be placing himself under more danger right now by blocking and being under attack from Johansson. You saw another move by Johansson than if he did let him by.
That type of blocking that we just saw Mansell do, Paul, about 10, 15 years ago would have brought around a black flag for the car that brought him in. If he did it again, they would start penalizing him and set him down if they had to.
Well, that
kind of stuff really needs to stop in this type of motor racing.
The view back from Nigel Mansell's car to Johansson.
The idea is that this is fine toward the end of the race when you're defending your position over the last few laps, particularly if you're the leader, but it is frowned on at this stage.
Sam, it's not good anytime. You don't ever block cars. That's how people get hurt in this business.
Now, Unser Jr. and Bobby Rahal have both been able to close in on Johansson. Remember last year how Rahal just sat back and watched Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy battle, and then when they got locked up in a fight, Rahal just went to the inside. But now Mansell using some very unusual lines to keep Johansson back. Johansson makes a move to the outside, and we've got a car into the barrier, and it is Emerson.
Boy, and is he buried into the tires hard on that one. The car's really deep into it.
Should be some concern for Fittipaldi. He is in the cockpit underneath that. There should be plenty of nice, solid, deformable structure around him to protect him. But remember, when Teo Fabi went very hard into a set of tires at the race at Denver, they were concerned for the weight of the tires. They're no doubt concerned about that here today. That's just steam coming off the coolers. They came up and doused it with water anyway.
Judging from how calm they are in the pits, chances are that Emerson has radioed in and he's okay. I think he's fine.
He's moving there. So Fittipaldi appears to be all right. The demeanor of the crew was such that they apparently had heard from him. There's Fittipaldi as he came in. Boy, he got it just all the way loose and up into the barriers. And with this accident, the yellow goes out all the way around the course. Moving around Luyendyk.
He got wide, he got out into the marbles, like I described a little while ago, where the track is dirty, Paul. The rear end jumped right around because he was trying to go around Luyendyk, and they're just too dirty out there. Now, another thing that could be out there, look on the ground there, all those little spots that you see, there's rubber.
Let's go to Jack Arute. Paul Tracy's in.
Well, the misfortune of his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi has provided some good fortune for your leader, Paul Tracy. Jerry Brion and the rest of the crew, Roger Penske watching, and they've changed all 4 tires. He lights them up, but he's out very quickly.
So taking advantage of that full course yellow on the 39th lap. Now Paul Tracy is in, so is second place Nigel Mansell.
This is a race that's developing along the lines of the last road course race, which was at Long Beach. Very like this.
Here's Gary Gerould.
Well, we watched Nigel Mansell off the Jackson away very quickly. He beats Stefan Johansson out by about a car length. And again, we see blisters, even though those tires weren't on there very long. He had indicated on the radio he wanted to get to the pits as soon as possible. The yellow gave him the opportunity, but we see more blisters.
So the sunshine down on this track, making for a slick track and a difficult day in adjusting to it. Here was Emerson as he moved to the outside. Same place that Gerould made his move earlier. Back in came around, Bobby.
Yeah, and he tried to stay as close as he could to the car he was passing. Unfortunately, if you look down at the racetrack, we had a close-up a little while ago, you see all those little black spots. Those are rubber spots. Those are from the tires on the ground, and that's the marbles that are getting the cars loose right now, Paul.
So we are back under a full course caution now as they get Fittipaldi's car off the course and do some repair to the tire barrier. We'll be coming back up to speed on Belle Isle shortly. We're back at Belle Isle in Detroit, the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix with 1 lap to go, and then we will restart coming out of this, the second caution period of the day, with a full course yellow. Now on Sunday, July 11th, it's the IndyCars again here on ABC, this time along the shores of Lake Erie. These IndyCar drivers on the north coast of Cleveland for the IndyCar Grand Prix presented by Goodyear. That's Sunday, July 11th on ABC Sports. We'll take a look at the standings as they sit right now under the caution. And while we look at them, let's review yet another rule. Rule 6.7 of the IndyCar rules as it applies to parade and pace laps. Toward the end of the paragraph, no driver shall attempt to improve the position of any race car prior to crossing the starting line. The decision of the officials as to whether a driver improperly advanced positions prior to crossing the starting line at the start of a race is not, repeat, not subject to protest. Jack Arute?
Paul, we've got another problem now. Behind me is a radar detector and a readout. The speed limit this afternoon on pit road is 80 miles an hour. Wally Dallenbach told the teams, you go to 86, he calls it drop dead time. 93 miles an hour was the exit speed of your leader, Paul Tracy. When they go to green, he's going to be called in for a stop-and-go penalty.
Paul Tracy is currently second in the race. The leader of the race is Bobby Rahal, but he has not completed a second pit stop. It's been 21 laps since Bobby Rahal has been in the pits. He's in front of the field now. There's Paul Tracy. He'll have a stop and go. And for an update on Rahal, let's go to Gary.
Well, it's one of those calculated risks down here, Paul. They stay out. They have the lead of the race. They hope that there'll be a yellow or an opportunity to get a stop somewhere before they get out of their fuel window. But keep in mind, everybody else who has pitted is going to have to make a splash and go yet in the final laps if we don't get more yellow.
So they should be coming back to green very shortly now. You saw the PPG pace car, Johnny Rutherford at the wheel. You look over the nose of Bobby Rahal's car. The pace car is still ahead. It will veer off to the right and onto the pit road as the rest of the field now begins to pick up the pace. And already Bobby Rahal is back at full chat. A flash to the green flag. And we're back running again. But very quickly, Paul Tracy should see a black flag for the stop-and-go penalty.
Remember that it was a year ago that Rahal won this race, as you, Paul, said, by very careful strategy of watching the others drop out. He's strongly positioned right now.
But he still then has to have another fuel stop, and he's going to try to stretch it out and hope for another yellow. It's a bit of a gamble right now.
Looking at how the back end comes around on Rahal's and Tracy's car there. That perhaps giving a bit of an indication, at least in that section of the course, on how slick it can get.
This is just the second race for Rahal in this new 93 Lola after they abandoned having him drive the Rahal Hogan chassis. So they're still getting used to the new Lola, but very effective here.
When you go up into that turn 7, they run from asphalt to cement and back to asphalt again. And that's where you see the cars really bump a lot. The rear ends really jump out when they do that.
Johansson battles with Mansell. And Sullivan is just behind Johansson as Teo Fabi takes the tire barrier out. And Fabi now climbing out of that car. So will this bring out another full course yellow? Here's how Fabi got into trouble. He came down under Groff. Groff cut the front end of the car off. and into the barrier.
Yeah, just took the wheel, the left front wheel, and just when he hit, he just literally turned it to the left and right at the tie barrier. Just no time at all.
Continues green on the remainder of the race course with Bobby Rahal still in front. And we've got another car, and it looks like Cheever in trouble. Second problem for Cheever of the day. So he did a quick spin, caught the left rear and the rear wing, Bobby.
Yeah, so what, we didn't see that happen right there, but what happens is that there's
a big Johansson made a move, and he didn't. But look, he gets into Bobby. Johansson was trying to make a move on Mansell, moved to the inside, he got shut off, moved to the outside, and into Bobby's wrecked car.
Bobby's car was really blocking a lot of the racetrack right there. The guys don't see it till they get there, although there are plenty of yellow flags. There's plenty of warning for it.
There had to be plenty of yellows out in front of that, especially with the IndyCar safety vehicle out there. This group of corner workers in Detroit, of course, have dealt with that before. Remember the situation over on the streets?
Mansell is checking his car. Look at this. He's slowed down. 2 cars shot right by him. So I think Mansell has been touched in this proceeding.
We take a look at what really is the end of the situation. Here comes the safety vehicle. Look to the right.
Mansell strikes nothing there. I don't know what the problem with his car could be. It's all involving Johansson and Fabi.
Back to a full course caution. Just mentioning the corner workers again, we were talking to one of the corner stations here. They were the same people that dealt with that situation on the streets around the Ren Center several years ago when they just literally closed down a section of the race course in 1991. Now, here comes Eddie Cheever trying to get back into the pit. Second time today we've seen this, but this time we're talking more damage. We're back to a full course yellow, and Bobby Rahal's gamble may have paid off, but we may have one of these volunteer course marshals injured. Flat rear tire on Mansell's car. Let's go to Gary.
You look with the crew, Paul, from the back of the car. They've already changed a destroyed right rear tire. Now Nigel gets back underway. Remember the adversity he had in Australia. He came back and won. Now he's had some real adversity here at Belle Isle. Can he do it again?
Well, it makes you wonder whether or not Johansson, when he made his dart to the right side of Mansell's car, might have gotten in to Mansell's right rear, causing this situation for Mansell. But at least it comes at a time in which there is a full course yellow. But again, the guy that it pays off for is Bobby Rahal, who is still the leader of the race, has gone 24 laps since his last stop and will have an advantage. Now, let's take a look at Mansell's car. And he did touch him.
Contact.
Indeed, absolutely.
You can see the left front wing of Johansson. Look at there. There he hit with it, so it's all destroyed now. But you can see where he got into Mansell's right rear tire, Paul, and it blew it out or cut it. And then his wing, you can see the side plate flapping just before he hit the yellow car of Cale Fabi there.
Indications are that Bobby Rahal should make a stop shortly and take advantage of this yellow. That will give Paul Tracy the lead of the race. This is Eddie Cheever's situation again. A slick track, the back end comes loose, and Cheever's into the wall.
Now, did you see all the trash that came back on the racetrack when Eddie hit the wall, then came back on the track? So all that gray stuff underneath come out. That's what making it slippery. Plus, not particularly this tire that's blown on the thing, but all the little tire balls are laying out there.
And now Bobby Rahal comes in. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Well, they gambled. They got the yellow that they want. Bobby hits the brakes once, a second time, and it's a smooth stop as they go to work on the car. Rahal, who won this race last year, only his second event in this new Lola chassis. This crew has done a terrific job in less than 2 weeks' time. They'll get him back on the circuit right now in under 13 seconds.
And as you plan the strategy of the race, it looks like Rahal got real close to one of the pylon markers there. He stops on lap 46. 77 laps is the scheduled distance. We are still under yellow. And we'll be waiting, too, for a stop-and-go penalty for Paul Tracy as the speed begins to pick up, and Danny Sullivan will be bringing them back to green, and we're racing once again. Robbie Gordon closing in on Little Al, then stretches back. Boisel sits in fourth place. Mario Andretti is fifth. And there's Paul Tracy in and out for his stop-and-go penalty. And he roars back into the fight. He came into the pits in 11th place. He'll fall much further behind now.
But keep one thing in mind. It's not quite as bad as it looks because he's got the fuel to go to the end and supposedly the tires. most of the other guys, with the exception of Rahal, still should have to stop again, Paul.
Update on Little Al. Here's Gary Gerould.
Well, we checked in with Rick Gallus, getting word on both Sullivan and Little Al. Can you make it without a splash and go for fuel at the end? He says we need 1.83 miles per gallon. That's very close. He admits it, but he says we're out here to win. It's been a long time. They're hungry. They're going to gamble and go for it, Paul.
Rick Gallus, you saw him there. He's always a gambler.
Yes, and you know, right, that's a good gamble to make, I think, because he can tell his drivers short shift. That'll save a lot of fuel. They won't even have to cut the boost back. The main thing is they could really make it.
We've got the onboard telemetry from Chevrolet's engine here on Little Al's car. Let's see. In fact, he is short shifting. Bobby, you watch him. Let's just listen to it and watch for a second.
Short shifting right now, although you only know that if you're the driver.
So back to the green flag. Danny Sullivan is in front of Al Unser Jr. We'll be back with more from Belle Isle after this message and a word from our ABC stations. And Scott Brayton in trouble. He came with a quick spin off the course and he wants to get going again.
Well, we can't see what happened to him right now, but he's sure upset about something, Paul. The main thing is, if they're pushing him so he lost it, you got to restart it.
Boy, was that lucky.
That's really lucky. These things don't always start with just a push like that.
That's not the car we're more accustomed to seeing Scott in. He brushed his primary car against the wall in practice. There you see, he got together with Groff. It just took him around. He wisely let it roll all the way off the course. Got a little push from the course marshal.
You can just see, it didn't really hurt the car, but you can just see how slippery the racetrack is, not from oil and water, but mainly from rubber, Paul, and probably the tires just being worked too hard today.
Once again, take a look. Brayton trying to dart inside of Groff. Groff kind of turned to the inside. The two of them bounced together.
That's what you call getting
no contact.
That's what you call getting the door shut on you, but it really wasn't anybody's fault. That's a real racing accident that couldn't be avoided.
And it did get Scott Brayton back into the fight on board second place. Al Unser Jr., his teammate Danny Sullivan is ahead, just having completed 52 laps, but Danny is now pulling out 1.5 seconds ahead of Al Unser Jr. Is it possible the team is working here together, where one of them is going to be the rabbit and the other is going to try and conserve?
Well, as we studied those revs on the onboard telemetry, the highest that Al Unser Jr. took his engine was 12.6. That's an engine that can rev easily into the 13,000. It's not impossible that he's gambling on fuel consumption and Sullivan is not, because there's a big spread in the way they're running right now, and I don't think there's that big a spread in the way they actually drive if they're using the car the same way. Now let's look at Sullivan's throttle and see how much he uses. He's in a tight part of the track now. We saw 12.7 there briefly.
And they really won't have a deal going between them. They just look at that that's another car as far as they're concerned.
Oh yeah, there'll be no teamwork there. They race each other, as we well know from Long Beach last year when Sullivan tapped Little Al, who was leading the race with just a lap to go. Sullivan went on to win that one.
Mario Andretti tries to hold off Ari Leyendijk. This is a battle for fifth place. Ari closing.
Except for Ari's brilliant month of May, where he had the pole position and wound up finishing second. He's had a miserable year so far with this car, which appears to have everything that it would need to have. A Ford engine, a Lola chassis, a brilliant engineer in the form of Mo Nunn. Ari Leyendijk, of course, a former Indy winner and winner of other IndyCar races, but he just hasn't had it together.
Sometimes teams just don't click for whatever reason. Maybe the guy doesn't get along with the mechanics or the team owner, or who knows. They just
Scott
don't
Brayton
click.
back in after his quick little spin. He apparently wanted to make sure he had good tires all the way around. Didn't want to go through that experience again.
He's been in so many times, another stop would probably be good. He's already bent one car. He's better off trying to keep this in pretty good shape, Paul.
Scott Brayton continues on after completing his fourth stop of the day, and we watch Robbie Gordon carrying A.J. Foyt's number 14. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Robbie Gordon is one of those drivers that may have to come in for a splash and go. They had 29 gallons on board. They say they're going to have to average 2 miles a gallon to make it to the end. They're just shrugging their shoulders. They may be one of the teams to stop.
You know, A.J. Foyt really likes this young man. As a matter of fact, he came up to me in the pits and said, hey, you got to mention my guy more. So, A.J., I mentioned him, Gordon, and Gordon again. Bob.
Running third place, but watch it when he comes off some of those turns. The rear end jumps right out. Now, this boy's been coming up through off-road racing, running on the dirt, so he knows
at the
what
front
it's
of
like
the field.
Al
Unser Jr. now trying to close on his teammate, Danny Sullivan. Danny was a second and a half ahead a couple of laps ago, but now Little Al is right there and trying on his own teammate.
Sullivan drove a defensive line into that next to last turn. He certainly knows what's going on here.
54 laps are complete, scheduled distance 77 laps.
The cars are all running loose here. You watch Little Al pop out occasionally.
Little Al gets onto the inside, tries to get past Danny Sullivan.
Over and over this season, the pattern for Little Al has been starting deep in the field and coming on. He's come up as high as third or fourth. He's never had a shot at the lead before.
Remember that it is terribly slick just offline on several of these corners. We have seen evidence of that, so it's a precarious run for Little Al.
Let's also keep in mind both of them have a fuel problem if they're trying to make it to the end. Like Rick Gallis said, it's a gamble, so they can't race each other too hard.
So these two cars battle at the front of the field. They are teammates.
Every single race this year, as I said earlier, you see them there, shortcutting that turn, has been won either by the Penske team or the Newman-Haas team. This is the first time a real threat to that dominance has been mounted.
Neither driver has won since last year. They both look for a victory here today. As we take a look at the full field running order at the conclusion of 55 laps and continue to watch the battle for the lead. And from time to time, too, you get a good glimpse of Robbie Gordon as he begins to close in from third place.
The interesting thing as we watch the two of them there, the three of them, is how's he going to pass? They would all like to get offline and do a turn, pass in a turn, Paul. The problem is there's too many marbles out there, too much slipperiness out there.
Second time as they've crossed over the line that Unser Jr. has come to Danny's right, let him know that he's there, let him know that he's thinking about it.
As we see that rundown, were the championship, were the race to end right now, the championship would actually be closer. Bosell with 64 points, Mansell with 74, just 12 ahead of Bosell. So right now, with this current situation, Bosell is closing up in the championship on Mansell.
Mansell currently runs in 8th place. The fight is at the front of the field. Unser Jr. trying to reel in Danny Sullivan. Update on Danny Sullivan, Gary Gerould.
All the speculation about the fuel. He had a fuel pickup problem yesterday in qualifying when they were below 5 gallons. They redid the cell. They hope they cured the problem. They won't know until the final laps of this race. So the leader has another concern, Paul.
So Sullivan trying to hold off a charging teammate, Unser Jr. Bosell now closing on Gordon, and Gordon closing on the battle for the lead. There are 56 laps now complete at the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. There's golf this afternoon here on ABC Sports. Right after the racing, coming up next, Jack Nicklaus previews golf's national championship, the U.S. Open. And then next Saturday, it's 18-hole coverage of the 93rd U.S. Open Championship right here on ABC Sports. But for the time being, it's the IndyCars. One car off the edge of the course, a waving yellow in that area. The battle continues for the lead.
I think Sullivan has had the feeling in the last few months that this team, the Gallis team, really belongs emotionally to Little Al and not to him. After all, it is a New Mexico-based team, and Little Al lives in Albuquerque. So this is a kind of, there's an edge to this rivalry as you see Shelley Unser there looking on as her man battles with Danny Sullivan, who we ride with there.
You know, we haven't seen Danny Sullivan drive this hard all year. The guy is really being gutsy right now and determined. That's something we haven't seen for a long time with him.
Both cars very well matched, both out of the same stable. Those different crews handle these cars, but now slower traffic becomes a factor just ahead.
Oh, going by Brayton there. And of course, as we talked at the beginning of the show, you see Ari Luyendyk
has stopped in the course. He was that car that we saw a moment ago on that aerial view.
As you talk about the foreign-born drivers who are in this race, and 15 of the 28 starters were foreign-born, suddenly we're looking at 3 Americans on the top of the list.
You see Dallenbach right there. Now, he wants to get a pull in. The idea is he's sitting there trying to force the truck to come around and get him, which my guess is they will. They'll have to do it to get him out of the way.
The question, of course, is whether or not they'll go to another full course yellow just to get that vehicle off of the course. They don't have to. Look in Danny Sullivan's pit. A lot of higher mathematics going down there as they try to figure out if they have sufficient fuel to make it to the end of this run.
They're praying for a yellow right now. That would put both of them pretty good chance and a real good chance of winning, or pretty good chance of winning the race.
Both Sullivan and Unser Jr. very highly paid drivers who've really not been producing, and now they are very much as this race winds to a conclusion.
You can see little Al working really hard on Sullivan now, because when they're catching somebody to lap, that's when Sullivan might become vulnerable to a pass. So little Al works really hard when that happens.
Exactly. Sullivan having to go offline to get by. That's Willie T. Ribbs that he went by along with little Al.
Ribbs very wisely lets both leaders come through. But even a move when someone's letting you through can be very dangerous in some of the areas of this course because it is so very slick now.
Hardest course on the circuit to pass on the day. It's really been a tough one.
This is the first time since the race in Australia we've seen trees on an IndyCar race. Beautiful here out on Belle Isle.
Just think of all the thinking that these drivers are doing, trying to figure out if they're driving it too hard, if they're going to make it to the end with their fuel.
They've just gone past Arie Luyendyk's disabled car. The IndyCar safety vehicle is there, and soon should maneuver out in position to try to get him off of the course. And yellow flags wave in that section of the race course. But on the rest of the track, the remaining 13 turns, well, they can battle, and Unser Jr. is doing just that. Though lately, both of them seem to be conserving a bit. Not now. Here comes little Al again.
Bobby, we've often talked about what little Al's strength is, and it's late braking. And we'll have to see whether there's any place around this track where he can play that ace. It seems like he's thinking about it, but he can't find a place for it.
Further update, Danny Sullivan. Here's Gary.
We just talked to team manager Ed Nathman for a brief moment, Paul. I asked him about, will you have to come in for the splash and go? Do you need a yellow? He says, I guarantee you we will not come in, but I can't guarantee you we'll make it to the finish line. They're sweating bullets down here.
So it was more praying and less mathematics when we saw Ed Nathman earlier.
Oh, here it comes. There's little Al.
Little Al, but there's flags there. He can't do a pass in that area.
You know, he had the pass, but unfortunately the truck was there. Looked to us pretty scary for a while. It's going to happen, but when it's yellow, when they get to the yellow flag, they are not allowed to pass. But as soon as they go by him, like right now, back to racing again.
You're sure of that at this race? There was a yellow there, by the way, too, so he still can't pass in that area. They put yellows out both ahead and behind a situation like that to make sure that the cars get safely past, so there's no peril for the disabled car or the corner worker.
You saw that shot of Rick Gallis. He, of course, allows his men to race each other, but I bet, given the long drought here, the long lack of success for this team, he wishes they wouldn't race each other right now, and they would just conserve fuel and try to bring them home 1-2. Wouldn't you suspect, Bobby? This is tough on a team owner.
Sometimes it's good to have two cars in a race. Right now, it certainly will make one girl old in a hurry. Rick Gallis is doing that, I'm sure. Just doesn't work for little Al here because they don't have high-speed straightaways where they can brake really hard in those slow-speed turns.
Plus, the place where you'd get offline to pull abreast is too slippery to make it really work. So little Al, his hands are tied. And he's got two yellows, too. So part of the course is cut off for him.
Now, where he's working is the traffic that's ahead. Of course, we're back into the yellow area again now. But it's the traffic ahead. Danny can't pass that guy either. So little Al's thinking, if he would block Danny just for a second where I could poke my nose alongside, it might be over.
Yeah, that's the kind of area where Danny Sullivan can be held back. Look at little Al as he darts in and out again. But again, that's an area covered by yellow. So frustrated by the slower traffic ahead is Danny Sullivan. Frustrated by the yellow flags is Unser Jr. That's Marco Greco sitting just ahead of both of them.
Greco gets the blue flag, which is the move over flag, which he does.
Actually an advisory flag. It tells him that a faster vehicle is following. It's not a direct command to move over. Though if you're running off the pace of the race, it's probably a good idea to get out of the way and let the leaders come through, if nothing more than avoid some sort of argument when the race is over. We'll be back. Detroit, the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. And overhead, the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company has dispatched the Blip Spirit to provide aerial views of the Detroit Grand Prix today. And boy, they have helped out, especially when we keep track of a battle like this one for the lead between Danny Sullivan and Al Unser Jr. Third is Robbie Gordon. Fourth, Raul Boesel. Fifth, Mario Andretti. Jimmy Vasser is sixth. Mansell is seventh. And Little Al makes another move. Same place, still can't get it done.
You know, if you wonder because of fuel why he keeps pressing so hard, the reason is that he needs, for his own well-being, to pass Danny now, get in front of Danny and make it hard on Danny, as opposed to right now, it's hard on him because Danny is out in front. Danny's only worries right now is, of course, lap traffic or traffic ahead of him.
Just remember, Robbie Gordon, young 24-year-old, back in third. He could become the beneficiary of this whole race if these guys run into trouble.
Finish some of that rundown behind Mansell, who's seventh. Eighth is Bobby Rahal. Paul Tracy is ninth. And the fight continues for the lead. Now they have against lower traffic. That's Matsushita ahead of them.
Oh, this is the closest opportunity Little Al's had in a while.
And let's also keep in mind, Paul Tracy and Bobby Rahal shouldn't have to stop anymore because of fuel. So they're going to become a factor as this race nears its end.
The yellow zones have now begun to clear. Green flags fly here. Danny Sullivan comes out alongside Matsushita. Now, right up here is where Little Al has been trying to make a move for several laps. Let's see if he can get it done this time. No, he's too far back off.
Sullivan 19th in the championship. Little Al 8th at this point.
By continuing at the front, this is the only battle on the circuit at this moment, and it is at the front of the field.
If that makes us anxious, just think lap after lap how bad Rick Gallis has got to be, because he really can't take sides on this thing.
Wonder what's going on in the Rick Gallis pits. I'm sure they're still thinking about it, Gary.
Indeed, we'll find out from the man himself. Rick Gallis, your drivers run 1 and 2. First, let's address the fuel. Can they make it, or will they have to come in?
Well, I haven't checked with Ed, but Al can make it. I'm not sure what Danny can do. I haven't checked with Ed, but we can definitely make it.
Now, I'm sure Danny doesn't want a yellow. Al probably wants one. Would that be the case?
No, we don't want the yellows. We want to go for it now. Let's get after it.
All right, you're 1 and 2. You're calling the shots for Junior. Nathman calls it for Sullivan. Are there any orders here from the team?
The only orders will be Monday morning when we get back to Albuquerque.
Nice to be up front, eh?
You bet. Thanks, Gary.
Paul?
Well, if things work out, they'll be ordering a nice fresh chocolate sundae so they can all celebrate. Danny Sullivan is in the lead. He's been running laps a little over 100 miles an hour. And Al Unser Jr. is behind him. He's been running laps faster, but look at Danny now stretch out a little bit.
He could be cooling his tires for a little bit, too. And when he sees a car like this coming up, Little Al probably try to close up to take advantage of a lap car.
Sometimes you want to change the rhythm, and you see him move right back up again. You want to take the edge off the guy that you've been pushing so hard, maybe get him to relax for a second and then pounce on him. I think Little Al has been trying A, he's tried B, he's tried C, and we're looking at D right now.
Sam, you're covering that one pretty good. That's exactly what he's been doing.
Robbie Gordon was a spectator from third place in this battle, but he has fallen well back now. The fight is still right here. Down through the rest of the order. Everything else is static. 65 laps of the 77-lap scheduled distance are now complete.
Both these men, of course, have won Indianapolis once. They have both been national champion once. They are, as I said, highly paid, highly motivated, very great racing drivers who've been in eclipse for the last year or so, since Little Al won at Indianapolis a year ago and Sullivan won at Long Beach the year before that. So this means the race before that. So this means an awful lot to both.
Spectacular ongoing battle at the front. We'll watch Al Unser Jr.'s telemetry. By the way, despite all of those full course yellows, we're averaging 84.6 miles an hour, nearly 4 miles an hour faster than the record. And now Jimmy Vasser, who was doing so well, is into the barrier, and another car in there. Very difficult to identify that one. That might be Willie T, but I don't want to take a guess at that. I guess I already did, didn't I?
Yes, you did, Paul, but it looks like it's Willie T, but it's really impossible to say with all those tires and the red wrapped around the car.
And the question is going to be, will they put out a full course yellow for this one? Vasser was running so well, up as high as 6th, and then into the barrier. Again, evidence of how slick it is just off the line. So if Unser Jr. wants to make a pass for the lead, he can do it, but he's going to have to be awfully careful. There you see the yellow flag ahead of the accident involving Jimmy Vasser. Vasser's obviously okay, climbed out of the car. They move on past and can resume racing speed once again. Fight is still at the front of the field. Unser Jr. decides to stay behind his teammate, and the fight will continue on. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Still leads Unser Jr. This is the only battle on the circuit. Everything else remains static. We still have a yellow section of the course, a caution section, because of the accident involving Jimmy Vasser. He's out of the car, no problem there. They're trying to get both of those cars cleared off the edge of the race course.
Just keep in mind, these tires don't get any better. They get slipperier as it goes on. The further we go on the race, or the closer to the end, the harder it's going to be for little Al to pass. But Danny Sullivan appears, because of Rick Gallis, to be lower on fuel than little Al is. So it's really going to get interesting.
Now you saw Vasser into the barrier almost nose on, and if you come by here, you can see there's also a second car there. That is Marco Greco's number 30 car. It was apparently left there after he just abandoned the car in that section of the race course. So that was not a two-car accident. Vasser just nosed on into the tires.
Top speed of about 165 reached here. You see a defensive line going in there by Danny Sullivan.
Now you know that Rick Gallis is telling little Al that Danny may not make it on fuel, but he won't tell him, and you can see that he hasn't told him that Danny won't make it on fuel. So he knows that there's a chance of it, but little Al knows at least that there may be a weakness on fuel with Danny.
Couldn't pass right there because of the vehicle. That's also one of the rough sections of the race course, but now they're again in contact, and little Al's going to look. It looks like they touch for a second there. Little Al comes to the inside. They continue side by side. Unser Jr. has to drop behind as Danny Sullivan has the better line into the corner, but is little Al anxious to try? You bet he is.
Well, that's about as hard an attempt at a pass that I've ever seen in my life. Virtually never gave it up. It looked like after Al touched him that he would give it up, little Al get by, but no way.
Danny with 16 career wins, Unser Jr. with 18. That shows how closely they are matched through history, and boy, that move shows you how closely they are matched right on this track right now.
Unser Jr. now using a technique of dropping back a little bit during the yellow zones and trying to get a run on Danny Sullivan. Looked like it just may work.
Yeah, cool his tires a little bit. Tires are really important today. Remember, the tires are softer. Heat's getting to him a little bit, so he cools them down, and then he takes a run at Danny, and I'm sure he's going to try it again.
A driver's heart rate is typically triple what it would be resting. You might be seeing a heart rate here. Oh,
and Nigel Mansell in trouble. And the full course yellow comes out now. Nigel Mansell climbs out of the car. They go to make sure that he is okay and the car can get off the course. But they are going to a full course yellow. We've got Vasser's car out there. You have Mansell's car. The leaders will close up. Fuel will be saved, and we can sprint to the finish.
It's certainly going to change all the game plans for practically every car on the racetrack, because the yellows you get about twice the amount of mileage as you do under the greens for the fuel, Paul.
This is the first race that Mansell will not have finished that he entered this year. And it will have some repercussions as far as the championship is concerned, because Bosell is running fourth right now, and Mansell, of course, will get only the point that he scored for getting pole position.
Now, my guess is they even know that Gallis's other side of the team, Ed Nathan, thinks that they may not make it with fuel. They won't pull him in now because they can gain enough under the yellows to probably do it.
This is on board with Nigel Mansell. Give us an idea of what happened. pushes out to the wall.
Oh, he hit those marbles. You know, if you just could see what's on that track, it's really dirty. Now watch.
Maybe this will show you.
Yeah. See, Nigel just got out. Look where his track started back there. You can see, got into the marbles. The marbles meaning all those little rubber balls, plus all the dirt that's out there. And he gets into that. There's no adhesion to the tire, and right into the wall he went.
You see Shelley Unser, she hasn't enjoyed a race like this in a long time. If Posey remains in 4th place, he'll close up to within just 7 points of Nigel Mansell in the championship at the end of today.
Again, Nigel Mansell's car, little offline, just a little too wide.
That's all it took. You know, he's turning the steering wheel. It's just not going to go anyplace. And if you saw that track out there, it's really a dirty racetrack. You can see when he hit the wall, all the dust that came out of the dirt there.
Mansell rides those curves, and this time I think it caught him out.
So under the full course caution with 70 laps complete, just 7 to go, Danny Sullivan slows it down while Unser Jr. closes in.
This should, of course, help the fuel situation. No end. We'll see a clean race for the win. See, he hits the curving on the inside first, and that propels him out into the wall.
Amazing, too, though. It didn't look like he was really trying to steer away from it. So another full course caution as Nigel Mansell catches the wall, and Danny Sullivan is still our leader. We'll be back. Knocking down a cone. Back in Detroit, Rick Gallis literally screaming at one of the officials. Did you hear that?
Let's see if we can get a word with Rick. Rick, what did they tell you? The report that we're getting is that there was a cone that was knocked down, and now they're going to initiate a stop-and-go penalty on Al Unser Jr.
Well, Rick Gallis absolutely furious. Al Unser Jr., when they come back to green, will start in 2nd behind Danny Sullivan. Robbie Gordon will sit in 3rd, but now they're telling them they're going to bring little Al in for a stop-and-go penalty. And officiating, figuring into the outcome of the race, apparently for tapping a cone. Bobby?
Well, it was that time, the only one I can guess about that time when he was trying to pass Danny on what we call the back straightaway over there, and he knocked the cone down. We saw that right on television.
The argument there would be that the cone marks the edge of the track, I believe.
But Sam, there's no rule to stay on the racetrack.
No, I agree with you, but I mean, I'm just trying to get at what the reason for the penalty might be.
Also, he moved to the left of Danny and only had a car width there. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
On the other side of the Gallis pit, Ed Nathman calling the shots for Danny Sullivan. Now, your reaction when you hear that Junior gets the stop and go?
Well, I'm elated. What do you think? We're still racing each other. I know we're on the same team, but we're still competitors on a racetrack.
Tell us about the fuel. Everything is good there. This yellow.
Oh, this last yellow is okay. Everybody's got enough fuel now to finish the race. The only problem was when it stayed green, it would have been really tight. You might have seen some cars run out of fuel, but we weren't going to stop no matter what.
Now, what about the boost situation? I know there's been concern for Danny with the boost.
Well, he's having difficulty adjusting it. Apparently, the cart valve's gone off, and it sort of randomly pops off. And he loses boost. That's why Junior sometimes makes a good run on him. Okay. It should be a good race between him and Robbie at the last 2 laps anyways.
A lot of emotion running high. And remember, Ed Nathman, for recent years, he was the man who was calling the shots for Michael Andretti with all of his success in the Newman-Haas team. Now he's got Danny Sullivan in his pocket looking for a checkered ball.
And you kind of stopped him with that boost question. What will happen here, as Ed Nathman suggested, is Danny Sullivan will come to the green flag. Al Unser Jr. will get a black at the same time, and that should bring Robbie Gordon up to 2nd. Let's go to Jack.
Paul, here's the gamble. What Rick Gallis is going to do is they're anticipating the green flag. When that green flag is displayed, they are going to have Al Jr. duck in as the green is displayed. Try to make this stop and go as penalty-less as possible. They are livid down here.
They did that with Paul Tracy earlier.
The pace car comes off. Al Unser Jr. comes into the pits. The green flag comes out. We're back to racing. 73 laps are complete. They flash over the line. And Robbie Gordon now closes in on Danny Sullivan. That's Willie T. Ribbs just behind him. We suggested he was out of the race earlier. He is not. There's the stop-and-go penalty. Al Unser Jr. back into the fight. The pace car will have to clear off the edge of the course. It does as Al Unser Jr. comes back. But now Robbie Gordon all over the back of Danny Sullivan.
And Robbie Gordon doing this on less practice than most of the cars in the race, because on Friday he hit the wall. There was no spare, no section, so he had to sit the rest of the day out. They got a new nose. This morning they had engine troubles. You see Gordon going all out. This is a fresh engine that they put in during the lunch break today.
Robbie Gordon going to give it everything he has. 3rd is Raul Boisel. Danny Sullivan comes out to make the turn. Gordon comes out with him.
And I remember, Robbie Gordon has been loose. The rear end's been loose all day. The boy's good at running sideways. There's no question about it. Danny could be Robbie Gordon's got a loose rear end. Going to make a heck of a race for the last couple of laps.
But Bobby, now Robbie Gordon has the same problem that little Al did, which is how to get by. It's one thing to go fast, how to get by. And Sullivan, of course, has been defending his position for several laps now and has got all the moves down tight.
And while this fight continues, Raul Boesel needs to get around slower traffic, and then he can close in. Remember, this battle should slow them up just a little bit, and that will give Raul a chance. Look at Danny, protect position.
This is the closest that Robbie Gordon has ever come to winning an IndyCar race. He started here last year with a brilliant drive. I asked him what it was like to drive these cars. He said it's like riding a bucking bronco. I said, well, why don't you slow up a little bit? He looked at me like I was crazy.
Robbie Gordon can taste the possibility of victory just ahead, Jack Arute.
Well, Paul Page, A.J. Foyt, it's been a long time since he's smiled. He has broken out to a smile here.
Gordon slows down.
No, you know, he just blew the turn. He blew the exit to the turn. I think the car's okay.
I'm sorry, Jack, go ahead. Maybe he's not smiling anymore.
Well, he still is, because what he radioed to Robbie is be sure to use your head.
Well, Robbie Gordon does fall off the leader just a bit. Danny Sullivan runs alone right now. Robbie is about a second back, but he can close.
Well, you saw him get out in the marbles there just a little bit, and he almost lost the car. When it went by the camera, it looked like he was going to hit the wall. So I'm sure he's going to slow down a little bit now.
Robbie Gordon was able to save it. Now he continues in his pursuit, but Raul Boesel should be closing on Gordon.
Of course, Gordon was third at the opening race of the year in Australia. He led Indy briefly. This will be a terrific finish for him if he hangs on to second. Here's Raul Boesel now up to third, and of course, improving his chances tremendously in the championship.
And that's Mario Andretti closing in on Boesel. Bobby Rahal behind Andretti by another car. There they are as they go to the white flag. It's Danny Sullivan in front. Rahal trying to challenge Mario Andretti. Gordon runs alone in second place. The leader is Danny Sullivan. Boesel still can't get around the slower traffic. The battle is here right now. Looks like they ran over some debris or something came off of Mario's car. But Danny Sullivan is out in front now. The final lap of this race. Can he hold on to the finish? He is unchallenged at the moment. But remember, this is still a very slick course. The fuel question should have been answered, and Robbie Gordon spins it. He has a flat tire. Look at that. The whole left rear has shredded on the car now. Precarious position. Here comes the rest of the field through. Robbie Gordon is safely out of the way, but that's not a great move.
Gordon literally throwing away second place with whatever went wrong there. Dramatic, like Milwaukee last week where he threw away third place with just a few laps to go.
A.J. Foyt almost biting his nails in the pits there as now Danny Sullivan is unchallenged at the front of the race. And the checkered flag lies just ahead. The courts marshals are out trying to get Robbie Gordon out of the way. Andretti continues to hold off Rahal. Here is Danny Sullivan as he makes his move into the final section of the race course. And Danny Sullivan has taken the twin checkered flags here. Danny Sullivan is the winner on Belle Isle in the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. His first win of the 93 season. There's still a lot to talk about. This was the problem with Robbie Gordon, is apparently he just had a tire shred on him. Bobby Rahal almost got him. Another view of the same thing.
With Mario Andretti right behind him, Gordon tries to take the turn with no left rear tire.
Of course, that wasn't the only situation here today. Here is Mike Groff as he chases Scott Goodyear for 10th and tries to punt him around the course. Now the first hit, and then Groff is still in trouble.
And the problem here is that the front wing is damaged, and right there it pulls off, jams under the left front wheel, and pulls Groff into the wall.
But the real telling moment was in the battle for the lead between Danny Sullivan and Al Unser Jr. Little Al tried to move to the outside and get past on a straightaway, Bobby.
Yes, according to the officials, he hit the cones there, which brought him into a stop-and-go penalty. But his argument, of course, is that he got knocked over there. And race cars have been off the tracks all my life and not got penalized.
All right, let's go talk with the winner, Danny Sullivan.
Well, Danny Sullivan finally taking his helmet off. Welcome to Victory Lane. It's been a while.
Well, since Long Beach last year, yeah, it's been a long time. It's great. It was a tough race. We hit the wall one time. I had no boost for the last 28 laps. I had 40 inches of boost.
How did that feel when you saw your teammate breathing down your neck?
Well, it wasn't a lot of fun having Al there. You know, I seemed like I was quicker every place but the straightaway. I'm sure he didn't appreciate it all, but it was great. I love it.
Let's check in with Gary Gerould.
All right, here's Al Unser Jr., who's just pulled the helmet off. He's talking with his crew, going for the sunglasses. Junior, can you give us an idea of what this kind of bitter disappointment must be like and the emotion that you've experienced in the last couple of minutes?
Well, I don't know what to say. The only thing I can say is I got penalized for running over cones that somebody else put me into, trying to block me to pass down a straightaway. And so I need to talk to Wally Dallenbach and find out what kind of racing are we doing here. And that's it. So that's it.
All right, Junior, thank you very much.
Proud of my guys and all that kind of stuff, and real proud of the team because the team just won a race. So that's first time this year, and it's great, but we got to figure out what the officiating is going to be.
It'll be an interesting conversation, I'm sure. Paul?
You think little Al's angry? Look at the group that's gathered around Chief Steward Wally Dallenbach, Roger Penske, Rick Gallis, Stefan Johansson, Rick Mears, all talking about the way this race today was handled. But while there are some angry people, there's some happy as well. Ed Nathman and his crew at Danny Sullivan's team, because Danny has taken the win here. And Raul Boisel has his third podium finish of the season and moves forward in the points. And even Monternmany comes home with a fourth-place finish. A tremendous run here on Belle Isle as we look through the entire order of finish in the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. Danny Sullivan wins it. What does it do to the points? Nigel Mansell had a 19-point lead coming in here. It's now narrowed to 3. Raul Boisel in second. Andretti Fittipaldi and Rahal are all now closing in. From here, the IndyCars cross the country to race in 2 weeks at Portland, Oregon. And then join us again here at ABC Sports on July 11th at the Burke Lakefront Airport in Cleveland. A series of road races for the IndyCars. Congratulations to Danny Sullivan on his victory at Belle Isle. I'm Paul Page for Sam Posey, Bobby Unser, Jack Arute, and Gary Gerould. So long.
Comes to building business. At ITT, we're adding more than just our name. Buy cold-filtered Miller Genuine Draft. Get out of the old. Get into the cold. Buy the heartbeat of America, Chevrolet, and your local Chevy dealer. And buy Craftsman, a line of 1,600 hand tools made in America. Coming up next, ABC Sports heads to historic Baltusrol Golf Club in Springfield, New Jersey. Join Jack Nicklaus for a special look back at his 2 Open triumphs there and a look ahead to next week's National Championship. It's a U.S. Open preview next. This has been a presentation of ABC Sports, recognized around the world as the leader in sports television.